First tonight, the matter of who became the first man to explore the North Pole is something still contested today, but it is widely believed to be a man from Maine.
Robert Peary led a number of expeditions to the Arctic, the final of which he claims he discovered the North Pole. Peary grew up in Portland and graduated from Bowdoin College, where a museum bears his name and a number of artifacts he collected.
It isn't just the history you will find behind the plexiglass. His story has inspired other students to forge ahead. From polar bears to fashion.
It's made out of seal intestine, so, which is a really terrific, light, flexible, and waterproof material.
You'll find all sorts of unique artifacts inside the Peary-McMillan Arctic Museum, each weaving a story about the past, present, and future of the Arctic and the Inuit.
The United States is an Arctic nation. We have Arctic territory and claims on Arctic waters, and strategically and economically and environmentally, it's a really important place. And so we are really well placed to educate people about the Arctic in all different ways.
Genevieve Lemoyne is the curator of this museum, which you'll find inside Hubbard Hall on the campus of Bowdoin College.
We just had our 50th anniversary.
The exhibits started with personal artifacts and photos collected by Robert Peary, a Mainer and Bowdoin College graduate.
He was a civil engineer and he graduated near, not at the top of his class.
It also bears the name of fellow adventurer and alumnus Donald McMillan.
But in his day, McMillan was really widely known across the country. He was a very popular public lecturer, so he had a lot of name recognition at the time. It's diminished a little bit now. We try and keep it alive.
Both made regular trips north, learning about Inuit culture and survival, but it was the final expedition that would make Peary's name more widely recognized.
So they left in July 1908 aboard his ship, the Roosevelt. They sailed up, they stopped in Greenland and in a number of communities where he hired a lot of Inuit to work for him, so men and women and families, and they brought their kids with them, and he bought a lot of dogs.
And the group pointed their ship toward the North Pole.
Peary had this elaborate plan where teams would go out and lay in supplies on the sea ice, and they would be sort of hopscotching up, where people would follow a broken trail, and then somebody else would break a new trail and lay in another cache. He would send people back when they weren't needed anymore, and finally he sends the last of the extra people, or the supporting people, back, and he and Matthew Henson and the 4 Inuit go on that last dash to the pole.
On April 6, 1909, they arrived, or so the story goes.
There were many different countries, explorers from many different countries trying to get there, and so it was seen as a nationalistic achievement.
Was he the first?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, assuming, there is of course debate over whether he got there at all, because it's not on land, it's on floating, moving sea ice. He couldn't put a stake in the ground and say, this is the North Pole and I was here, which you can do at the South Pole, because it is on land, but the sea ice is always moving.
Still, they planted a flag and took a photo, making this Mainer and his small crew the first with some sort of proof they reached the North Pole.
So there was no objective observer available to say, yes, there they are at the pole. And so it's always going to be something that you can contest.
Which has only piqued the curiosity of this curator and museum director Susan Kaplan.
It is sometimes really stunning to realize, for instance, how warm it has gotten.
Both Kaplan and Lemoyne have been exploring the Arctic for decades, leading archaeological trips, and they aren't the only ones inspired by what's around them.
People from Bowdoin started to go to the Arctic in the 1860s. At the museum, we have 130 years of photographic history of individual communities. You can watch people grow up in these communities, and we have relationships with those communities today. And so while we are studying their past, we also have relationships with them today. And we work with them. We take young people on our expeditions when we are able.
Through those working relationships, scientists are continuing to learn more about the area and climate change. And this museum's collection has grown from a modest 1,000 artifacts and photographs to more than 45,000.
I think the museum is really well placed to provide the public a sense of the uniqueness, the specialness of the Arctic.
Beginning with a daring race to the North Pole. Okay, one of my favorite pieces in the museum is a letter that Donald McMillan received before a separate expedition that he went on. It's unclear who handed him the letter, but the envelope specifically reads, "To be opened when everything has gone dead wrong. Hope you never have to open it." And it has never been opened. McMillan got himself into tight spaces, but according to the museum curator, he was always confident enough that he would make it out okay. Even his wife wanted to know what was inside the envelope, but he would not open it. So the museum is respecting his wishes and has enclosed it in plexiglass, as you just saw, never to be opened.
I couldn't work there. That would be way too tempting
Wouldn't
for
that
me.
drive you nuts?
I don't. And how many years? So how many years would that have been? You think?
Well, the museum's been there for
Since-
50 years, and he had it, years before that. So
Wow, I can't believe nobody.
you can see like the coffee stains on it. He carried it with him wherever
so
he
cool.
went. But
I guess if you're having like the worst day ever, you know where to go to open a letter.
yeah, when things go dead wrong, we'll open it.